All right, first I want to kick it off about March Madness, and I'm super fired up for women's basketball and Vic Schaefer getting a 1 seed, hosting here Friday. I think it's 2 o'clock, so hopefully everybody comes out and supports what they're doing. And obviously tomorrow night our men's basketball team with a great opportunity, got a pretty good seed with a 7 seed, and as they start their journey as well. So this is an exciting time. So looking forward to supporting, RT and Vic and their teams and what they're doing here in the NCAA tournament. For us, this was a pretty good first day. And I'm always hesitant to lay too much praise after one practice. Like I'm always a little hesitant to be too critical after one practice. But I thought that it was pretty evident that the energy was really good out there at practice. It was pretty evident the amount of depth that we have. I mean, we have this is the most numbers that we've had in a spring practice since we've been here, and I think that's a combination of a few things. I think the transfer portal has affected that, where you can have guys kind of replace players right away. I think that's a byproduct of so many early admits, guys coming mid-year. And in the end, the fact that we were able to two-spot all of our team stuff in practice, and that we were able to go 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and everybody on the team getting reps and improving and getting better. I thought the coaches really demanding the fundamentals, the techniques that are needed in all 3 phases, offense, defense, and special teams, was evident as well today. But again, there's a ton of things that we need to get better at and we need to work on. But for a first day spring practice, I was definitely pleased.
Coach, when you have a new set of receivers working with quarterbacks, what are you looking at, so early in the process?
Well, one thing for me is, are we being coachable, right? And you guys were out there, I think, for some of our routes on air type stuff, and the details in those routes of the landmarks on where the receivers are supposed to be, the timing of those throws, because that's how you develop trust. And then that subtle communication between a quarterback and receiver that will grow over time as we continue to move through it. But again, I'm just looking for guys that can do what we're asking of them, do it to the best of their ability, because we're a very talented group, but doing it to the best of their ability, and then the quarterbacks trusting those guys that they're going to be where they're supposed to be. And so that's going to be a bit of a process as we go. But like I said, today was a good start to it. I thought there were some high-level plays that got made. Again, I think there were some things that we're going to have to go and correct off this tape. But as we grow, hopefully the rapport with Quinn and Arch and those guys continues to move in a positive direction as we go throughout spring.
Steve, last year you really preached the versatility of last year's group, and you talked about being able to identify that starting last spring. I know it's only one practice, but I'm just curious where the team kind of falls in that regard as far as the versatility that you mentioned.
Well, I think we have that as well again this year. I would say just as a team in general, I don't think we're going to be a one-dimensional team that's going to have to rely on one phase of the game to be overly just dominant. I'd love for all 3 phases to do that, but I think we're going to be when the dust settles, we're going to be a really good offensive team that will have balance. I think we're going to be a very good defensive football team that's going to be able to have some versatility in man, zone, and pressure things. And I think we're going to be really good on special teams. Just a couple glimpses I saw today. We've got quality returners. We're always going to be aggressive in our intent in the way that we call it. And so for us, when we've got that balance in all 3 phases with the quality of players that we have, ideally that sets that versatility up for us where we can win games a multitude of ways. But that's, like I said, that's gonna be a process and take some time. I will say, just first glimpse offensively, we've got some really versatile players offensively, and from a receiver standpoint, we were moving guys from outside to inside, playing them in the slot, playing them outside. We moved our runners around probably more today than we have a first practice of spring ball, and trying to play to their strengths as well. And I think that helps when you've got really experienced quarterback who really understands the offense and he can manage some of that stuff at the line of scrimmage.
Steve, is it hard to get a full gauge of what you have until, uppers come on and then pads come on? Is it tough on day one to get the full picture?
Without question. I refer to today's practice as underwear. And we don't play football in underwear, right? We play it in armor. And so you find out more as we go. But this gives a good sense and a gauge of just kind of where we're at from a starting point. And this was a pretty good starting point for us. You can tell the guys have been in their playbooks and studying. You can tell the intent of our coaches. Obviously a couple new coaches, and you could feel their passion. Coach Nancy and Coach Baker, they were coaching at a high level, very intense. The players responded to that. But ultimately, as we grow, we're in a teaching phase of what we're trying to do. But then there's going to come a point where there's a level of physicality that comes with the speed and the things that we're doing. And then that ability to do it down after down after down. And so that's part of the growth as we kind of move through these practices to get ultimately to practice 15 of the spring game.
Steve, when the weights come out, everyone's eyes, are always looking who's gained good weight and all that.
Yeah.
Sadir Mitchell at 372, Blackshire at 261, and Savion Red at 240. Can you just talk about what you're seeing from those guys?
Yeah, but probably all three of them a little heavier than we would like. But we're in March, right? And we're not playing a game until September. I guess it's August 31st this year. And one thing I know, some of that weight will naturally come off through spring practice. The other thing I know, when we start running in June and July and DKR at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that weight comes off a little easier then too. But again, I'm not overly concerned. I would like that weight to get down for all three of those guys. I think they'll be better players when that weight's down a little bit.
Steve, you mentioned the word obsession on a post this morning. How do you define that word? And what positives do you see in the word obsession, and then what negatives maybe come along?
Yeah, no, I think being obsessed is something like, man, you got to love what you do. You're obsessed with what you love to do. You have confidence in what you're doing. You do it in the absence of fear. You're committed to the cause. You're committed to what you're doing. And ultimately, the positive of that is that you're striving towards something and that you're committed to it. The negative with it comes that you go overboard with what you're trying to do. And so the challenge for us is being obsessed with this mission that we're on, but yet make sure that we're finding balance in our lives and that we're committed to the classroom. We're committed to who we are as people as much as we are committed to being the best football players that we can be.
So what is the challenge of breaking in like 25 newcomers and so many fresh faces?
Just getting them to go the right way. You go out to practice the first time and you just hope guys are where they're supposed to be. We've got a lot of moving parts when we practice. I'm not one where I like guys standing around. And so generally when we're working one drill over here, we've got 3 other drills going on at the same time. And a lot of times a new face can get lost and be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And then he's not getting those reps to do what he needs to do. But that goes back to when they first get here in school. You just try to get them going in the right direction, taking the necessary steps, being where they're supposed to be off the field, and then trying to get them to be where they're supposed to be on the field. And then that'll kind of lends itself into their play, being where they're supposed to be from play to play to play and doing what they're supposed to do.
Coach, you guys have obviously lost 2 defensive tackles that might end up being first-round picks. Talk about the challenge of replacing those guys and what do you need to see from like a Collins, Broughton, all those guys to have that faith in them?
I think, we have probably a little bit more experience than maybe people will want to give us credit for. Alfred is a very talented player who has matured from one year to the next. And I think that he's if he continues on the progression that he's on, he's poised to have a great year. I think Vernon Broughton, again, another one of those guys that they gave us a lot of quality reps the last 2 seasons, and I think now more than ever they're poised to step into that role. And Tia Savea, I mean, he's played a lot of football at Arizona. So to have that experience of those 3 guys is helpful. And then we've got some young, talented players. I think Dre Bledsoe's an extremely talented young player who's going into year 3 now. I think Aaron Bryant is another guy that's going to now start to give us some of those reps that Alfred and Vernon gave us the last couple of years that they can give us. I think a first glance, Alex January is a guy who has been impressive early on in off-season workouts and conditioning and things. And so I think we've got a really good mix of older veteran players who are ready for their time, similar to Sweat and similar to Murphy. When Morrow and Coburn left, they stepped into that role, and so now it's that next phase, and it's that natural progression of guys moving through the program.
Coach, what about leadership overall?
Yeah. I think one thing, we were talking about this as a staff. I don't know necessarily if we have just one dominant voice on this team. I don't know if we have Roshan Johnson as an example, but I do think we have more positive quality voices on this team. So I think our leadership is now kind of more all-encompassing, and that's what you like. I'd much rather have multiple people that lead in a positive way, different voices at different times, than relying on 1 or 2 voices, because when those 1 or 2 voices aren't on that day, who's leading? And I think that we're much more spread out. I feel really confident talking to different guys on our team that have been in the program, that know what it looks like. I generally, when we go through flex lines or stretch lines, I like to tap into those leaders and making sure our energy's right, our intent's right, what we're trying to get done for the day. I noticed it today. I was having to talk to a lot of guys, and that's a really good thing. The fact that we're returning so many offensive linemen. We are returning Quinn. I think Gunnar Helm is a guy who's been in the program, really understands. Jaden Blue is a guy who's really grown up, is in year 3 in the program. Defensively, we talked about Alfred and Vernon. You look at Ethan Burke and his time here. You look at David Benda, Anthony Hill already young and into his career, Michael Taff, Jade Barron, Jalen Gilbo. So a lot of guys, and I'm leaving some guys out, not intentionally, but it's just a different team that way. And that's the beauty from year to year. Every team is new. Every team's got to recreate their own identity and recreate their culture for that team. And so I think this year's team is a little bit different that way, that we've got a multitude of players that can lead. And as a coach, that's really comforting that I've got more guys that I can tap into and lean on.
When you brought in some really good football players, transferred, you built this culture the way you want it. How hard do you vet these guys, because they're veteran guys that have been other places, to make sure they fit in the way you're trying to solve?
Well, I think that's probably the biggest challenge of the transfer portal. The high school kids, when they come in, and I'm going to get to that, I'm going to answer that, but the high school kids, when they come in, we've been recruiting those high school kids for a year, 2 years, 2.5 years, right? And think about how long we've been recruiting Colin Simmons, for example. And so so much about them and what their makeup is. The portal's very unique because these guys go in a portal, and sometimes 4 days later they're on your campus on an official visit. And so we really have to be diligent in doing our process of getting to know them, tapping into the right people that have worked with them, whether it was high school coach, trainers, sometimes their own coach from the school they're coming from, to make sure that they can fit in our culture, that they will thrive in our culture, because we just don't want somebody that's just going to survive. We want people that are really going to thrive in this environment. And so far, a couple months into this thing with these guys being here, it seems really good. Andrew Makuba is awesome. He's wired really well. He's a great team guy. Amari Nyblack, Isaiah Bond. Some of these guys have been really, really good. Trey Moore has been unbelievable of what he's brought. And so, I credit our recruiting staff. I credit our coaches for the work they've put in to find the right blend of players. And some of them, sure, there's been a little bit of a transition, but then they look at it and they really enjoy it. I was talking to Isaiah Bond today, halfway through practice, about how much he enjoys now practicing in the morning and waking up every day in the morning. He's like, man, I almost feel more fresh. I feel better. So you never know what a guy was at one place. Maybe we can even get a better version of him here.
How would you lean on, if you have an opportunity to recruit guys out of the portal you have a previous relationship with, like Isaiah, Matthew Golden, that it makes that vetting process a little easier?
Well, it definitely helps, especially the length of which we recruited him. And like Matthew Golden, I was very confident and very comfortable with because we had recruited him at length the first time around. He had been on campus. We had been around him, been around his mom. So that process was really easy. Isaiah's was a little bit different just because of we had recruited him, but he had never really been here, but we still knew him. Kendrick Blackshire, Coach Banks had recruited him so hard in high school, we had a very good understanding of him coming out. So they're all at different stages, but it is extremely helpful. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to recruit other kids. Like Silas Bolden, for example. We hadn't recruited him, but I had a really good relationship with Jonathan Smith. We got him on campus. You could tell the good nature of the young man and what he was made up of. And so they're all different, but it is helpful when you have a little bit of previous history and relationship with them.
How's Quinn look to you? Is he body shape different, and how do expectations ramp up?
Yeah, I thought I think Quinn looks good. His body. We went from where he was a couple years ago to slimming himself all the way down last season to, if you look at him, he looks a little broader now this year, and I'm hopeful we can maybe get 3 to 5 more pounds of just strengthening him up that way. I thought Quinn played really confident today, and had good command and. A little different for us, for Quinn and I this year, is my ability to talk to him through the mic. And we started practicing that today. And I think having 2 years of experience of working together and now having that dialogue through the headset, I think is going to be beneficial for us.
What's the biggest, what does Quinn have to adapt to? You've worked with a headset in pros before. What's the biggest thing a quarterback has to adapt to?
Again, I don't know if it's just Quinn. I think it's he and I, because, again.
The headset specifically.
Yeah, no, it's just hearing it, and as opposed to the signals. I still think he's going to look to the sideline, but yet hearing that call and then communicating that with the pertinent information that's needed. And I think the challenge for me is how much information is quality, good information, and when does it cross the threshold of too much to where it's a little bit of paralysis by analysis, because there's too much information. And so, and that's a fine line of he and I working together with some of that stuff. He and I working with the offensive line and getting that communication done. But I thought it felt really comfortable for him today, first time out and doing it.
Steve, just to clarify, the NCAA is still a few weeks away from officially green-lighting, the headset stuff, but you're allowed to use that technology now? Yeah,
we're in kind of that phase where they're allowing us that opportunity to do that, in working with the SEC and with the NCAA. That looks like it's going to be a go for us this fall.
Can you play faster or slower because of the change?
I think you can do both, quite frankly. Again, it's a lot easier to say 5 words and signal 5 words,
right.
But yet you can give more information and you can have some real dialogue to where you can speed up, slow down, and hopefully I can give him some information that allows him to play a little bit faster within plays as well.
How much time is that going to save you every week? And you mentioned that it's a lot of time suck and having to change your signals to make sure that people aren't stealing them.
Well, I don't know if we're going to totally abandon that. Like I said, today was day 1 of working ourselves through it, and we're in total base install mode. We're not in a game plan mode, so we're still teaching the foundation of our offense, which is signaling. But as we get closer to the season, start getting into training camp, I'm sure we're going to have different modes and mechanisms of getting play calls in. But again, we want to teach the foundation of signaling because, God forbid, the headset goes out in DKR for whatever reason, I still got to get the play into our players. And so we always want to kind of have contingency plans available. So we still want to teach the foundation of our offense, which is signaling, but yet getting used to the new way of having the ability to communicate to the quarterback.
Do you have any idea what defensive player or position you would want to have that?
We're still going through that. It's I think the natural thing is, like in the NFL, it's your one of your linebackers, a guy who's connected to the front and the back end that can communicate. But because of the space of college football, and because of the hashes and the width of the field, we've kicked around possibly it being a defensive back, maybe our star, because of where he aligns and that ability to communicate. So we'll see. We're still working through that. Again, it's still very new. And the idea that people aren't going to go no huddle just because there's a headset really isn't true. And so you're still going to have to signal some defensively as well.
Coach, we used to bother you about JT Sanders, and remember we see more of him, right? And then we saw it obviously last year. Is that the same progression for Jonte Cook when we start talking about a 5-star and what they need to do in order to get on the field more? Like, give me an idea where he's at.
Yeah, no, I think again, player development is something that we take a lot of pride in our program, on and off the field. And I think one of the challenges is when we first got here, I think JT might have been the only 5-star in that class. That was a top 20, 25 player in the country, according to you guys. Hopefully, we're recruiting more high-quality players over time, and there's going to be more guys that are going to be in that developmental process early in their career. Jonte being one of those guys. He had an opportunity last year to play behind possibly 2 first-round draft picks and another guy who's going to play in the NFL. And so how much do you attack that year to try to improve your game? I thought Jonte had a really good practice day from the naked eye without looking at the tape, and kind of doing what he was asked of him, made plays when the ball came his way, had really positive energy out there on the field. But there's a lot of guys that are in that fold that hopefully they can continue to grow in the program as the years move forward.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, guys, thank you.